So we've all been following the total demolition of the East Wing of the White House. But Mabel, I didn't realize that the construction's going to take years on this ballroom, so Trump will barely get to use it as president.
Yeah, like he's going through all of this trouble, but why if he only gets it for a couple months? That's what people are estimating.
Yeah. Also, next year's the big 250th anniversary that he's hosting at the White House. So he wants it to be a construction site. Like, that's going to be an eyesore.
Yeah, I guess he must be really excited about it or something because it's supposed to be huge. It's nearly double the size of the main White House residence part. Trump says it's supposed to be able to fit like 1,000 people. And we've seen renderings of it. I'm sure everyone has. And it looks very similar to the Mar-a-Lago ballroom.
We also noticed he's adding a roof terrace. Like, it's not a hotel. Why do you need a roof terrace at the White House? Like, cocktail hour on the roof? What are you doing? And it's now supposed to cost $300 million to build. And that's up from the original estimate of $200 million. And Trump says he is donating a large part of that.
Yeah, he said that it was funded by, quote, many generous patriots, great American companies, and yours truly.
But here's my conspiracy corner. And I want to just go on record. As soon as I saw the alert about this, I was like, this is for ballroom payments. Remember how he's demanding $230 million from the Justice Department? He said he's owed that because they had done him wrong with those investigations. That is to cover his portion. Like, I just know it because the timing for it to align is happening all right now, that the amount being so specific. And Trump actually made a similar joke about this.
Probably owe me a lot of money, but if I get money from our country, I'll do something nice with it, like give it to charity or give it to the White House while we restore the White House. And we're doing a great job in the White House. As you know, the ballroom is under construction.
And then the rest, whatever Trump isn't covering, is coming from companies. And Fortune compiled a list of the 37 companies who have donated to this ballroom fund. And it's all of the big tech firms that you can imagine: Meta, Apple, Amazon, Google, Palantir, Coinbase, Microsoft, all of them. And ethics experts are asking, is this going to be pay for play? Like, are these companies, because they're funding building a part of the White House, are going to feel indebted and like they can have say over policy issues?
No, it's a fair worry because the White House isn't releasing a list of who's funding or how much money is being given. So this could all be kind of done under the table. And the money that he's raising is also being deposited in this place where you can't really monitor it. It's going to the Trust for the National Mall, which is a nonprofit, tax-exempt entity that isn't subject to transparency laws. So literally, who's he taking the money from? How much? Where's it going? Like, we don't have access to any of that. And it's kind of crazy that this is all happening while the government is shut down. We're all seeing, pictures of this demolition and all of this gold and reconstruction happening while people are struggling financially. People are, furloughed. It kind of, when I was doing research for this, it kind of reminded me of like pre-French Revolution, like, because they were reconstructing Versailles and Marie Antoinette was eating cake and wearing all these clothes and people couldn't afford bread.
For sure giving let them eat cake.
And I feel like he knows that it looks bad because he's wanted to keep it under wraps for a while. Like, last week, his Secret Service blocked off this entryway where journalists were taking pictures because they didn't want those pictures to get leaked. And then apparently Trump ordered federal workers to refrain from taking and sharing photographs with people. So he knows that it looks really bad.
And a lot of people are asking, is this even legal? Like, he didn't get approval for this. A lot of us didn't know that a president can just demolish a whole wing of the White House and there's no repercussions to that. So we looked into it, and apparently construction typically is overseen by a committee called the National Capital Planning Commission, and it's a 12-member agency that's under the executive branch. But Trump has not submitted construction plans to them yet, even though this is already underway. And Trump's justification is that the demolition isn't part of the construction. It's separate, and they only need to oversee the construction.
Well, that's crazy because also Trump appointed the chairman of this committee, and it's actually one of Trump's former personal lawyers. So, of course, he's also saying, well, the demolition isn't a part of the construction. He doesn't need to, submit any of the plans.
Well, maybe the current chairman that he appointed is saying that, but former ones have spoken out saying that approval normally does happen before any groundbreaking. Quote, the demolition element is inherent to the overall project. Demo is not separated from construction. It's part of it. Duh.
Yeah, why? You're not going to break it down to just leave it like that.
Yeah. And the concern with this is that then Are we just skipping like building guidelines, especially historic preservation? This is the White House. This is history. And speaking of that, he's also separately being sued for violating the National Historic Preservation Act of 1966 for not consulting with government councils whose whole job it is to oversee historic preservation. There's multiple of them, and he didn't talk to any of them before literally tearing down the entire East Wing of the White House. So even though they know they violated longstanding tradition, which is going through all of these councils, Trump's team is justifying this by saying they didn't violate any actual laws. And that's something we've seen time and time again from Trump. They don't care what the tradition is or transparency or the usual code of doing things. They're just going to do it.
No, it's true. He isn't following the protocol that presidents before him have followed, because he isn't the first one who's done, this reconstruction in the White House. Other presidents have done it as well. But again, they've gone through proper protocol. Historians keep pointing to Harry Truman, who apparently inherited like a very crumbling White House. Apparently, the interior was so bad that chandeliers would shake and threaten to fall on like the first lady once, and his daughter's piano leg infamously like broke through the floor. So it actually needed to be reconstructed. But even so, he worked with the House and Senate. He established a bipartisan committee to oversee the entire project, and it was all to just get $5 million that he had to wait to get approved by Congress. So people go through proper protocol. Just because you're the president doesn't mean you get to skip everything.
Well, right. That makes me question why he's funding it himself. Like, this guy doesn't seem to want to spend money unless he is benefiting from it somehow. So what is he, like, I keep trying to put myself in his shoes. Has he been embarrassed when world leaders come to the White House and there's not a grand ballroom to like show off? Maybe that is at the heart of this. It's just hard to imagine what is motivating this.
Yeah, I mean, it's fair. A lot of people are asking the question, why is he doing this? Because like you said, he's only really going to be in the White House for probably a couple months benefiting from this reconstruction. So why go through all of the effort? Especially because during his first term, Trump has infamously called the White House a dump. Like, even though he denies it, he doesn't seem to love it there. He's staying at his other properties. He's at Mar-a-Lago a lot. So again, why go through this? And there's a lot of theories kind of floating around. Experts in psychology and design have actually weighed in on the conversation and are saying kind of what you're saying, which is that maybe there's a strategy motivating why he wants to rebuild the ballroom, why he's gilding the Oval Office and the cabinet room. Like, there is something potentially to having overwhelming gold and portraits and this grandeur that makes people feel uneasy, especially if politicians are having meetings with him. So that's actually a theory that someone who studies the mental impact of design said.
Yeah, I mean, there's definitely something to that. And we're not idiots. We know that there's the conspiracies that he's not going to be leaving office after this term, in which case then he would be there to enjoy the ballroom. But we're operating under reality for now until that is tested.
Something else people have really been focusing on within this construction is that in order to make this ballroom, he had to tear down a lot of pre-existing parts of the White House, a lot of areas, a lot of history. And Ren has actually done some extensive reporting on what has to be taken down for this to come up. So want to share with everyone?
Yes. So all of these rooms no longer exist as I go down this list. So first, the office of the First Lady. So every First Lady since Rosalind Carter in 1977 shared or, passed through this East Wing office. But even before that, decades before that, Eleanor Roosevelt was actually the first Lady to use the East Wing as like professional space. She would take meetings with different women's groups and activist groups, which I guess is lucky that Melania has only spent 14 days in DC this term because she doesn't have an office. And then the East Colonnade, which is kind of like the walkway that connects the East Wing to the residence, which is supposed to represent the passage from public to private life. And that is one of the corridors that is very famously decorated for the holidays every year. And it was the site of Melania's viral all red, quote unquote, murder trees from 2018.
Thank God that's gone, honestly.
And then the family theater. I didn't even know there was a theater, but that's so fun, where every presidential family has watched movies since the 1940s. And they also would do private screenings. So celebrities would come and watch their film with the president, or you'd have local kids come in. The gift shop is also gone. That opened in the 1940s, and it sold, maybe this is why Trump wanted to bulldoze it, because it sold only generic White House merch. So it wasn't his MAGA merch. It was just like you can get little White House like figurines and stuff. But we also know from our Zelensky visiting the White House story that Trump has put up like a pop-up gift shop in the West Wing, and he was showing Zelensky his MAGA merch and his like 2028 hats. So He found a way. And then finally, the East Wing entrance, which is also where the White House visitor's office is gone, because if you tour the White House, every tour starts in the East Wing entrance. And as of now, tours are canceled indefinitely.
No, that is so sad, because I feel like when we learned about the White House as children, you always think of it as so many separate areas and parts that are kind of working together to keep the White House running. It's sad that so many of these rooms and the theater, I remember learning about that as a kid, like is all gone just to allow this one very lavish ballroom that probably won't be needed that much to just exist.
And originally he said the existing East Wing wouldn't be touched.
Right.
That the ballroom would just go up next to it. What happened to that plan? Because that was a good plan. Then you could have it all, best of both worlds.
Well, I guess in a way we shouldn't really be that surprised that this construction is happening, because this isn't the only thing he's remade in his less than a year back at the White House. We reported on his paving over the Rose Garden that he did a couple months ago. So he paved over the Rose Garden with stone and has these like yellow and white Mar-a-Lago type umbrellas kind of hanging around there. And he's already had a lot of really high profile events there. So he's using that space. And honestly, to me, like the gilding is what has gotten out of hand at the White House.
Everywhere.
It's everywhere. Like we mentioned, the Oval Office, the cabinet room where he has meetings and hosts people. There's gold portraits. There's ornate chandeliers. There's even like gold presidential seals on the ceiling. And then the last thing, you mentioned the East Colonnade, but he's also remade parts of the West Colonnade, which, remember, in September he unveiled the Presidential Walk of Fame, which displays every presidential portrait in like chronological order. And of course, the portrait is framed in gold.
Yes, but we mentioned that instead of putting up Biden's picture, he put up a picture of his auto pen signature. And that was a big feud, saying that like executive orders Biden signed weren't valid because he signed them via auto pen, which everyone uses. It's like when you go online to sign something, you just like click, put your signature there.
Yeah, glad he got it.
It's just very petty.
But all of this just kind of makes you think. I was thinking of like, why does this bother us all so much? Like, what about all of this remodeling sets us off? It's because he's essentially making the White House into his presidential palace, while former presidents have at least pretended to have some sentiment of respect that this is actually the people's house. This isn't like his personal house. He's just living there for 4 years. Like when Obama was asked about what object he liked the most in the Oval Office, he pointed to this rug that was there that was handmade from Michigan, and it had quotes of all these American leaders on them. And he said his favorite quote was from MLK that said, "The arc of the moral universe is long, but it bends towards justice." So there's just this representation of American values and like leaders that's there. But Trump is just now spending a lot of money making a Mar-a-Lago dupe.